What if I told you that Hollywood tried everything to stop this movie, but Keanu Reeves fought back and changed the industry forever? And where are you from? Leave a comment. Please don't forget like, subscribe and share. The small cafe on Sunset Boulevard was buzzing with quiet conversations and the occasional clinking of coffee cups. Among the many patrons, a young filmmaker named Ethan Carter sat in the farthest corner, staring blankly at his laptop screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but the words refused to come. It wasn't writer's block, he had the perfect script. It was the crushing weight of reality that kept his hands still. Ethan had spent the last 5 years in Hollywood, chasing a dream that seemed to drift further away each time he reached for it. He had written screenplays, worked as an assistant on low-budget sets, and even taken up odd jobs to keep himself afloat. But now, as he sat in this cafe, he felt his passion slipping away. His script, City of Shadows, was a gritty crime thriller, his magnum opus. It had depth, emotion, and a message he believed in. But no one cared. He had pitched it to over 30 studios and independent producers, only to receive the same response: "We love the story, but we can't take the risk on a newcomer." With no funding, no investors, and no connections, Ethan was at the end of the road. He had sacrificed everything: his stable job back home, his friendships, his savings, all for a dream that now seemed laughably out of reach. He sighed, running a hand through his messy brown hair, and took a sip of his now cold coffee. Just as he was about to shut his laptop, he heard a voice. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Ethan looked up, and his heart nearly stopped. Standing before him, wearing a simple black jacket, jeans, and a beanie, was Keanu Reeves. The Keanu Reeves. Ethan blinked, wondering if exhaustion was playing tricks on his mind. But no, this was real. The Hollywood legend was standing right there, looking at him with a kind, patient smile. "And no, go ahead," Ethan stammered, quickly moving his notebook and phone aside. "Thanks," Keanu said, sitting down across from him. He placed his coffee on the table and took out a small book from his jacket. Ethan stole glances, trying not to freak out. This was a man he had admired for years, not just as an actor, but as a person. Stories about Keanu's generosity, humility, and kindness were legendary in Hollywood. But what was he doing here? And why did he choose this seat? For a few moments, the two sat in silence. Ethan tried to focus on his laptop screen, but his thoughts raced. Should he say something? Ask for a picture? No, that would be too cliché. He didn't want to come across as another starstruck fan. Then, unexpectedly, Keanu spoke. "You look like you've been staring at that screen for hours," he said, his voice calm and friendly. Ethan let out a small chuckle. "Yeah, something like that." "Writer?" Ethan hesitated but nodded. "Screenwriter. Or, at least, trying to be." Keanu raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What are you working on?" Ethan hesitated again. He had explained his script to so many people before, only to be dismissed. But this was Keanu Reeves. With a deep breath, he decided to take the chance. "It's called City of Shadows," Ethan said. "It's about a detective who's forced to go undercover in the criminal underworld, only to realize that the real corruption lies within the system he thought he could trust." Keanu leaned forward slightly, his interest piqued. "Sounds intense." "It is. It's dark, emotional, it's personal." Ethan paused, then laughed bitterly. "Not that it matters. No one wants to back a film from an unknown filmmaker." Keanu tilted his head, studying him. "You believe in this story?" "More than anything," Ethan admitted. For a moment, Keanu just looked at him, as if seeing something deeper, something beyond the frustration and self-doubt. Then, he smiled slightly. "Sometimes, the right story just needs the right person to believe in it." Ethan sighed. "I just wish I knew where to find that person." Keanu took a sip of his coffee and set it down. Maybe they'll find you. Ethan chuckled. That'd be nice. He didn't realize that, in that very moment, his life was about to change. Because Keanu Reeves was not just making casual conversation. He was listening. And, unknown to Ethan, he was about to do something extraordinary. Ethan Carter left the cafe that evening feeling a little lighter, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the conversation with Keanu Reeves, however brief, however casual. Or maybe it was simply the fact that someone had actually listened to him without dismissing his dream outright. But, in the grand scheme of things, nothing had really changed. He was still a nobody in Hollywood. He still had zero funding for City of Shadows. And in just a few weeks, he would be completely broke. That night, Ethan sat at his tiny apartment's desk, his script open in front of him. His landlord had already given him a final warning about the rent. If he didn't find a way to make money soon, he'd be sleeping in his car. This is it, he thought. I have to try one last time. Ethan opened his email and started sending queries to independent producers, film investors, even film schools that sometimes helped fund indie projects. He crafted each message carefully, making sure to emphasize why City of Shadows was a story worth telling. But deep down, he had no hope. He had done this before. And he had been ignored before. Still, he hit send, closed his laptop, and collapsed onto his bed, staring at the ceiling. If nothing happened this time, he would have no choice but to pack up and leave Los Angeles. Meanwhile, across town, Keanu Reeves sat in his dimly lit home office, holding a copy of Ethan's script. He had done something unusual earlier that day. After their conversation at the cafe, Keanu had quietly approached the barista and asked if she knew the young filmmaker. "Oh, Ethan," she had said. "Yeah, he's in here all the time. Always working on that script of his." That was all Keanu needed to hear. He had asked for Ethan's contact information, not to reach out, but to do his own research. After pulling a few strings, Keanu managed to get his hands on a copy of City of Shadows. And now, as he read through it, something unexpected happened. He couldn't put it down. The writing was raw. The characters felt real. The dialogue was sharp. But more than that, it had heart. It wasn't just another crime thriller. It was the kind of story that Hollywood didn't make anymore. Keanu leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin. He had worked in this industry long enough to know that Ethan didn't stand a chance without connections. Hollywood wasn't about talent, it was about who you knew. But Ethan had something rare. He had a story that mattered. And maybe, just maybe, Keanu could do something about it. The next morning, Ethan was jolted awake by the ringing of his phone. He groaned, barely opening his eyes. It was an unknown number. Probably another bill collector. With a sigh, he answered, his voice groggy. "Hello? Ethan Carter," a deep voice said. "Yes. This is James Holloway from Horizon Pictures. We received your script submission." Ethan shot up in bed, suddenly wide awake. Horizon Pictures was a well-known independent film studio. The kind that actually took risks on unknown talent. Yes, sir," Ethan stammered, barely believing what he was hearing. "We're interested," Holloway continued. "Your script has potential, and we'd like to discuss the possibility of funding your project. Can you come in this afternoon?" Ethan nearly dropped his phone. This had never happened before. For years, he had been ignored, rejected, and told that he wasn't good enough. Now, out of nowhere, a major studio was calling him. Something wasn't adding up. "Of course," Ethan said quickly. "I'll be there." As he hung up, he sat on the edge of his bed, heart pounding. What had changed? Why were they suddenly interested in him? He had no idea that someone had already set the wheels in motion. Someone who had read his script. Someone who believed in him. And that someone was Keanu Reeves. Ethan arrived at Horizon Pictures' sleek glass building that afternoon, feeling completely out of place in his thrift store jacket and scuffed sneakers. He stepped into the massive lobby, where assistants and executives buzzed around like they belonged to a different world. A young assistant approached him. "Mr. Carter?" Yeah. That's me. "Mr. Holloway will see you now." Ethan followed her down a hallway, his mind racing. Why was this happening? Why now? Finally, he was led into a spacious office, where James Holloway, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with sharp eyes, stood waiting. "Ethan Carter," Holloway said, offering a handshake. "I have to say, your script is impressive." Ethan swallowed hard. "Thank you, sir." Holloway gestured for him to sit. "Now, let's talk business." For the next 20 minutes, Holloway went over potential funding options, production timelines, and distribution strategies. Ethan could barely keep up. But then, the conversation took a turn. "We do have one request," Holloway said. Ethan nodded. "Anything?" "We'd like you to consider a lead actor we have in mind," Holloway continued, sliding a folder across the desk. Ethan opened it, and his breath caught. Inside was a headshot of Keanu Reeves. Confused, he looked up. "Wait. I don't understand." Holloway smiled slightly. "Keanu Reeves recommended your script to us. He believes in it. And if you're willing to work with him, we're willing to back your film." Ethan's entire world shifted in an instant. Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves had read City of Shadows. Keanu Reeves had personally sent it to Horizon Pictures. Keanu Reeves wanted to star in it. Ethan's hands trembled as he closed the folder. He didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or scream. This was the break of a lifetime. But it also didn't make sense. Why would Keanu, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, help a complete nobody like him? Ethan was about to find out. Because this was just the beginning. Ethan Carter sat frozen in James Holloway's office, staring at the headshot of Keanu Reeves as if it were a hallucination. This can't be real," he finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, it's very real," Holloway said with a knowing smile. He leaned forward, fingers interlocked on his desk. "Keanu Reeves personally sent us your script. Said it was one of the best stories he's read in years. And he wants to be a part of it." Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. Keanu Reeves believed in his script. Keanu Reeves, the man whose films had inspired him, the legend who had sat across from him in that little cafe just days ago, wanted to star in his movie. "Now," Holloway continued, his tone turning businesslike, "here's where things get interesting. With Keanu attached, we're willing to fully finance City of Shadows. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar budget, professional production team, and full distribution." Ethan could barely breathe. This was everything he had ever wanted. No more scraping by. No more begging for meetings that never happened. No more getting ignored by the industry gatekeepers. This was his shot at making it big. But then. Holloway slid another folder across the table. "There's just one condition." Ethan hesitated before opening the folder. Inside was a contract, pages and pages of legal terms and clauses, but one section caught his eye immediately. It was a director's replacement clause. He frowned. "What's this?" Holloway sighed, like a man who had delivered this kind of news before. "Look, Ethan, you're talented. Your script is brilliant. But the reality is, you're an unknown filmmaker. A project of this scale requires someone with a proven track record. So, while we'll keep you as the credited writer, we'll be bringing in a more experienced director to oversee the production." The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. They were offering him his dream, but at the cost of his control over it. He swallowed hard. But, this is my story. My vision. I know exactly how I want this film to look, to feel. I understand, Holloway interrupted smoothly. And trust me, the director we have in mind will respect your vision. But this is how the industry works. Investors need confidence. And an untested filmmaker at the helm of a multi-million-dollar project? That's too risky. Ethan clenched his fists under the table. He had poured his soul into this script. He had spent years perfecting it, knowing exactly how he wanted it to come to life. And now, they wanted to take it from him. But Keanu, Ethan blurted out, as if saying his name could change the situation. Keanu believes in this script. Wouldn't he? Keanu agreed to star in the film, Holloway said. But he isn't calling the shots on production decisions. Ethan felt like the floor was shifting beneath him. This was the deal of a lifetime. But if he signed, City of Shadows wouldn't be his anymore. The unexpected meeting. That night, Ethan wandered the neon-lit streets of Los Angeles, the contract burning a hole in his bag. He had spent years dreaming of this moment. And now that it was here, he felt lost. By pure instinct, he found himself back at the same cafe where he had met Keanu. It was nearly empty at this hour. He ordered a coffee and sat in the same corner, staring at the blank page of his notebook. Then, as if fate itself had planned it, Keanu Reeves walked in. Ethan nearly choked on his coffee. Keanu noticed him, smiled, and approached. "Hey, Ethan." Ethan scrambled to stand. What are you doing here?" Keanu chuckled. "I come here a lot. Great coffee." Then he motioned to the empty seat across from Ethan. "Mind if I sit?" Ethan nodded quickly. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Keanu leaned forward. "You got the offer from Horizon, didn't you?" Ethan exhaled. "Yeah. I can't believe it. I mean, you did this. You got them to read my script." Keanu shook his head. "No. Your story did this. I just made sure the right people saw it." Ethan swallowed. "But they want to replace me as director." Keanu's expression didn't change. He simply nodded. "Of course they do." Ethan blinked. "Wait, you knew?" "I've been in this business a long time," Keanu said. "Hollywood doesn't trust new filmmakers. Even if your script is perfect, they'll always choose experience over passion." Ethan clenched his fists. "So what do I do?" Keanu studied him for a long moment. Then, in his signature calm voice, he asked, "What do you want?" Ethan's breath caught. No one had asked him that before. For years, people had told him what he should want. A foot in the door. A big break. But what did he actually want? He wanted to make this film his way. Keanu nodded, as if reading his thoughts. "Then don't sign the contract." Ethan's eyes widened. "But if I don't? They'll find another writer. They'll rewrite your script. And the film that comes out won't be City of Shadows. Not the way you envisioned it." Ethan's stomach twisted. He had waited so long for this chance. Could he really walk away? Keanu leaned forward. "You have another option." Ethan frowned. "What?" Keanu's voice was calm but certain. "We make the movie independently." Ethan's mouth went dry. "You mean?" "I fund it," Keanu said, as if you were talking about buying coffee, not producing a multi-million-dollar film. Not through a studio. No corporate interference. You direct. You make the movie exactly the way you want. Ethan couldn't breathe. That's insane. You do that?" Keanu smiled. "I wouldn't offer if I didn't believe in you." Ethan stared at him, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't just an opportunity. This was a miracle. But there was a catch. If we do this, Keanu continued, it won't be easy. No safety net. No big studio backing us. Just us against Hollywood. Ethan felt a shiver run through him. This was the moment. The biggest decision of his life. And he had to choose. Ethan Carter's hands trembled as he stared at Keanu Reeves, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. We make the movie independently. The words echoed in his mind, too big to process all at once. This was insane. This was impossible. This was everything he had ever wanted. Ethan swallowed hard. Keanu, this is a multi-million-dollar film. Even on an indie budget, it would still take millions to make. Keanu smiled, leaning back in his chair. I've made a few successful movies. I think I can afford it. Ethan let out a breathless chuckle. This is crazy. Keanu shrugged. Crazy ideas change the world. Ethan's heart pounded. He had two paths in front of him. Sign the contract with Horizon Pictures, give up his dream of directing, and watch City of Shadows become someone else's movie. Take Keanu's offer, risk everything, and fight for his vision, knowing that if they failed, he'd have nothing left. Ethan clenched his jaw. He had spent years being rejected, ignored, and told he wasn't good enough. Now, for the first time, someone believed in him. He met Keanu's gaze. I'm in. The next morning, Ethan did something that few aspiring filmmakers would ever dare to do. He rejected Horizon Pictures. The moment he emailed Holloway, his phone exploded with calls. At first, they were polite. Ethan, let's talk about this. You don't want to throw away this opportunity. Then, they became aggressive. You're making a huge mistake. You'll never get another offer like this. And finally, the threats. If you walk away, Hollywood will shut you out. No one will work with you after this. Ethan gritted his teeth and shut off his phone. Let them threaten him. Let them blacklist him. City of Shadows wasn't going to be made on Hollywood's terms. It was going to be made on his. Within a week, Keanu wired the initial investment into a newly created production account. Ethan had expected resistance, paperwork, or at least some hesitation. Instead, Keanu just said, get what you need. Let's make this movie. Ethan immediately got to work. He hired a small but dedicated crew, cinematographers, set designers, and indie film veterans who believed in passion over corporate backing. He cast unknown but talented actors in key roles, alongside Keanu, who insisted on working like everyone else, no special treatment, no personal trailer, no ego. He secured locations through favors, connections, and sheer determination, transforming abandoned buildings and empty streets into cinematic gold. For the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't just dreaming about making a movie. He was actually making one. But Hollywood wasn't about to let this slide. Rumors began circulating online that City of Shadows was a doomed project. Articles labeled Ethan as an arrogant newcomer who had insulted major studios. Industry insiders claimed Keanu had lost his mind, throwing his money away on a film that would never see the light of day. And worst of all, investors started pulling out of indie projects associated with Ethan, fearing they'd anger the big studios. Ethan felt the pressure mounting. The more they pushed forward, the more Hollywood tried to crush them. Then, the real sabotage began. During the third week of filming, they had a major night shoot planned, one of the most important scenes in the film. Everything was ready. Cameras set up. Actors in position. Lights perfectly placed. Then, suddenly, the power cut out. Not just on set. The entire block. Ethan's stomach twisted. What the hell? The crew scrambled to check the generators, but something was off. The power shouldn't have gone out, not all at once. Then, one of the techs found something. The power cables had been cut. Deliberately. Ethan's blood ran cold. This wasn't an accident. Someone was trying to shut them down. Keanu stayed calm in the chaos. We'll find a way to work around it. But Ethan felt the pressure closing in. First the bad press. Then the funding issues. Now, literal sabotage. Hollywood wasn't just watching them fail, it was actively trying to make them fail. That night, Ethan sat alone on set, staring at the broken cables, rage burning inside him. They thought they could scare him off. They thought they could kill his movie before it was made. But they had underestimated him. And they had underestimated Keanu Reeves. Keanu's plan. The next morning, Keanu called an emergency meeting. Hollywood wants us to fail, he said simply. So let's prove them wrong. Ethan expected some kind of legal response, maybe hiring security, reporting the sabotage. Instead, Keanu did something unexpected. He personally leaked behind-the-scenes footage to the internet. He posted about the movie on social media, calling it the most exciting project I've worked on in years. And then, he went on live TV and said, Hollywood doesn't get to decide who tells stories. We do. The internet exploded. Fans rallied behind them. Other independent filmmakers started offering help, locations, resources. Actors who had never met Ethan reached out, wanting to support the project. Suddenly, City of Shadows wasn't just a movie. It was a movement. With momentum back on their side, Ethan and his team pushed forward. But he knew one thing. Whoever had sabotaged the set wasn't finished yet. And in the shadows of Hollywood, a powerful enemy was watching. Waiting. Planning. Because if City of Shadows succeeded, it would change everything. And some people weren't ready for that. Ethan Carter had never been more exhausted in his life. The past few weeks had been a war, a battle against Hollywood itself. Sabotage on set. Smear campaigns online. Investors being pressured to back out. Yet, despite everything, City of Shadows was still standing. And now, only 1 week of filming remained. But Ethan knew one thing for certain, the people trying to stop him weren't done yet. Late one night, as Ethan sat in the dimly lit editing room reviewing footage, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Hello. A disguised voice crackled through the speaker. They're coming for you, Ethan. You need to leave LA. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Who is this? Silence. Then, the voice whispered, it's bigger than you think. Click. The call disconnected. A cold chill ran down Ethan's spine. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to ruin his movie. They were coming for him. The next morning, Ethan met Keanu at an abandoned warehouse, one of their film locations. Keanu leaned against a rusted car, watching Ethan carefully. You okay? Ethan exhaled. Someone called me last night. Told me to leave LA. Keanu's face darkened. I had a feeling this would happen. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Keanu sighed. Hollywood isn't just an industry. It's an empire. And when you go against the empire, they don't just try to ruin your career. Ethan swallowed. You think I'm in real danger? Keanu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Ethan. It was a legal document, a cease and desist order from Horizon Pictures. They were trying to sue him. For making his own movie. Ethan felt rage bubbling inside him. They can't stop me. Keanu's expression remained calm. No. But they can make sure no studio, no theater, no distributor will ever touch your film. Ethan clenched his fists. So what do we do? Keanu smirked. We finished the movie. The last day of filming. With legal threats looming and mysterious figures watching from the shadows, Ethan and his crew pushed forward. One final scene. The climax of City of Shadows. It was a high-stakes chase through the streets of Los Angeles, with Keanu's character trying to escape an underground crime syndicate. They had one shot to get it right. But as the cameras rolled and Keanu sprinted down an alleyway, Ethan's worst fear came true. A black SUV screeched onto the set. Men in suits jumped out. And suddenly, they weren't filming a movie anymore. Ethan's heart pounded as the men approached. One of them, an older man in an expensive suit, stepped forward. His face was calm but dangerous. "Ethan Carter," he said smoothly. "You've caused a lot of problems." Ethan squared his shoulders. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Someone who fixes problems in this town." Ethan realized in that moment, this wasn't just about a movie anymore. This was about power. Hollywood wasn't just a business. It was a machine. A machine that destroyed anyone who didn't follow the rules. "You have two choices," the man continued. "Walk away. Never release the film. And you'll have a future." Ethan's fists clenched. "And if I don't?" The man's smile vanished. "Then you'll never work in this town again. And neither will anyone who worked on your film." Keanu stepped forward. "You really think you can threaten us?" The man didn't flinch. "This isn't a threat, Mr. Reeves. This is how the industry works." Ethan felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff. If he backed down, he'd save himself. But if he stood his ground, he'd be declaring war on Hollywood itself. Ethan turned to Keanu. And in Keanu's eyes, he saw no fear. Only certainty. Keanu smirked at the suited man. "You don't get it, do you?" he said. "Hollywood doesn't own the audience anymore." The man frowned. "What are you talking about?" Ethan's phone buzzed. A notification from Twitter. Then another. And another. Keanu had just leaked the final scene of the movie, Live. To millions of fans. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Fans rallied behind City of Shadows. Hashtags like hashtag Let Ethan Make His Movie and hashtag Keanu vs. Hollywood trended worldwide. Independent theaters offered to screen the film for free. Streaming platforms started bidding for distribution. Hollywood's biggest secret had just been exposed. They had tried to kill a movie. And instead, they had turned it into a revolution. 1 year later, the premiere that shook the world. 1 year after that night, City of Shadows premiered at a sold-out independent theater in Los Angeles. No big studio logos. No corporate sponsors. Just a movie made by artists, for the people. Critics called it a masterpiece of independent filmmaking. But more than that. It became a symbol. A symbol that Hollywood didn't own cinema anymore. After the premiere, Ethan and Keanu stood on the rooftop of the theater, overlooking the city lights. Ethan exhaled. "I still can't believe we pulled it off." Keanu grinned. "They underestimated you." Ethan turned to him. "And you? You risked everything for this." Keanu took a sip of his whiskey and smirked. "Some risks are worth taking." Ethan smiled. "What now?" Keanu looked at the city below. Then, with a twinkle in his eye, he said, "Now we make another one." Thank you for watching. Please again, I request don't forget like subscribe and share.